The Terramancer is a mage build that utilizes the devastating AoEs of Geomancer to deal tons of earth damage, while also making use of Necromancer skills that hit for physical damage to individual targets. Sprinkle in a few Hydrosophist skills and you have a Terramancer. At first glance, this seems to be an unusual combination, however it can be quite deadly, as Earthquake will knock down targets with no physical armor, and Global Cooling will freeze enemies with no magic armor. By adding physical damage with Necromancer, we ensure that we can CC any target we face, and deal whichever damage is more useful. Terramancers are not DPS monsters, but they do have a flexibility that some other builds do not. Terramancers are also particularly durable not only because of their access to nearly every single armor buff, but also through the use of Vampiric Hunger and Living Armor. This skill used in conjunction with this talent ensures they never run out of magic armor, and since Terramancers are heavily invested in Geomancer, their physical armor buffs are extremely powerful, making them nearly impossible to kill. Terramancers focus on intelligence to increase the damage of their Geomancer and Necromancer skills. Terramancers should start putting points into wits once intelligence is maxed out to help increase their critical chance. Be sure to place enough points into memory as you go to be able to use all the skills this build takes advantage of as well. Also, place a couple of points into strength or constitution as necessary to be able to use strength-based armor as well as a good shield. Terramancers use a mix of strength and intelligence-based armors to get excellent physical and magic armor. Terramancers want to find a balance between the two if possible, with enough magic armor to give yourself time to replenish it via damage. They should look for armor with Geomancer, Warfare, Intelligence, Wits, and Critical Chance in that order for best results. Points into Necromancer or Hydrosophist are also a plus. On the weapons side of things, Terramancers should use either a Poison Wand or any one-handed weapon. The upside to using the wand is that you have an extra ranged attack if you need, and it also provides an intelligence bonus, which is nice. One-handed weapons will allow you to use Battle Stomp, which helps with CC, but does not hit very hard with this build. Either of these will work just fine since you won't be using them often anyhow. Terramancers have a pretty straightforward abilities distribution, placing 2 points into Geomancer, Necromancer, and Hydrosophist early on in order to gain access to the skills there. Then taking Geomancer and Warfare up in a 1-to-1 ratio until maxed, only dropping 1 extra point into Necromancer and Hydrosophist if you want to take Bloodstorm and Silencing Stare in Act 2. Make sure you have 1 point into Scoundrel for Vampiric Hunger as well, which you should get from gear anyhow. As far as talents go, I'd recommend the following. Living Armor. Vampiric Hunger makes this talent shine with this build. Mosquito Swarm on an enemy when buffed with Vampiric Hunger will replace huge chunks of missing magic armor, which is fantastic. Elemental Affinity. This talent works decently with this build because you can use Flesh Sacrifice for 0 AP if you are an elf, and you quite often cover the map in oil. Savage Sortilege. This talent is a must for any mage build and will allow your skills to critically strike. Get this one near the end of Act 1 or beginning of Act 2. Hothead. This talent is really good with this build because it will increase the critical chance of all your skills. Only needed in Act 2 when you have Savage Sortilege. Now that you've decided which talents and abilities you want, you'll need to identify just which skills work best with this kind of setup. Terramancers will use a mix of Geomancer and Necromancer skills with a few Hydrosophist skills. This allows them to deal 2 damage types, Earth and Physical, while maintaining huge quantities of armor. Since builds evolve over the course of the game, I'm going to put the skills in order from earliest obtainable to latest, because you won't be able to get them all right away. Geomancer Skills. Fortify. A great skill for buffing your physical armor. Works extremely well with this build because of the high Geomancer ability and can buff party members as well. Fossil Strike will be your main DPS skill until you get Impalement and Earthquake. Great at slowing melee units, preventing them from getting to you or your teammates. Impalement, a very good damaging AoE for 2 AP. Creates oil which slows enemies and can cripple targets with no physical armor, which synergizes with Necromancer skills. Earthquake, decent damage in a massive AoE but is expensive at 3 AP. Use when you can hit many targets in order to soften them up for global cooling, which can freeze them. Worm Tremor, an expensive skill but can root targets in place through armor, preventing them from getting to you or party members. Use this when other Geo skills are on cooldown. Necromancer Skills. Mosquito Swarm. Deals decent damage and sets the bleeding status effect and has very good range, 13 meters. Also heals you for a decent amount, which works extremely well with living armor. Decaying Touch. This skill has very limited range but can deal good damage and set decaying, which allows you to damage enemies with healing. Not a must for this build, but useful for the physical damage. Shackles of Pain. This skill is an excellent way of controlling the battlefield, as the AI in the game doesn't like to hit you if you have this on them. Learn how to use this and predict enemy behavior when applied. Bone Cage. A great skill for buffing up your armor, and the more dead bodies around, the better. Does get boosted by high Geomancer ability, making it the best physical armor ability you have. Infect. As of February 1st, this skill's damage was buffed by 40%, making it more potent, but it still has a high cost at 3 AP. Has a 13 meter range, which is really nice though. Silencing Stare. This might be the one and only build I actually use this skill in, and as of February 1st now destroys magic armor too. It works well after an earthquake when enemies have their magic armor stripped or nearly gone. Bloodstorm. Might be the single deadliest skill in the game. For 4 AP and 3 SP you get a skill that deals insane damage to all targets in a huge AoE, sets diseased and decaying, then does it again for 2 more rounds. Armor of Frost. The best way to buff your magic armor, and also removes a variety of status effects. You won't use this that often because of living armor, but it's still nice to have just in case. Vampiric Hunger. A vastly underrated skill that adds 50% lifesteal. Useful to help replenish magic armor via the living armor talent, and only costs 1 AP and lasts 2 turns, which is great. Global Cooling. Use this skill after an earthquake to freeze enemies that have little or no armor. Extremely useful for 1 AP and recommended on any build that uses some sort of elemental damage. Warfare Skills. Bouncing Shield. A must-have skill for any build that uses a shield. Will capitalize on the high warfare ability you will have and will help strip physical armor, which allows for Earthquake and Impalement to apply their status effects. Deflective Barrier. A great skill that will help to soften up your enemies so that you can apply your status effects. Also benefits from the high Geomancer ability you'll have, so becomes even more useful. Challenge. As of February 1st, this skill now only costs 1 AP, making it viable for nearly every warfare-oriented build. Buffs physical and magic armor in addition to increasing your damage for 1 turn. This build is one of the few that I've made that uses Vampiric Hunger, with Eternal Warrior being the other, which provides 50% lifesteal. Lifesteal adds together with whatever you have on your weapon and with whatever percent you have from Necromancer. This is then multiplied versus your Hydrosophist to calculate exactly how much you will heal. Lifesteal is dependent on damage, so dealing more damage will provide a bigger heal, which makes AoEs particularly useful. We don't use this skill for the healing, but rather the effect of living armor, which allows you to replenish large quantities of magic armor via damaging enemies. Terramancers have a mix of earth and physical damage that allows them to select which is most appropriate for their targets. Think before you act, and remember that you want to strip physical armor first if you can, because Earthquake and Impalement are resisted by it. Bouncing Shield is a great way to do this, as is Mosquito Swarm and Infect, then follow up with an Earthquake for some knockdowns, and then follow up with Global Cooling for some frozen enemies. Rinse and repeat. On my Terramancer, I use a shield with Reflect physical damage for this build, because it helps to strip armor, making it possible to apply the status effects, and there's really no reason not to have it on there. Physical Reflect is the best type because your resistances mitigate how much damage you take, and therefore you will reflect a lower number. Enemies can also resist elemental damage, reducing the damage they take even further from this Reflect. There is currently no resistance to physical damage unless an immunity, so it will always deal full value. These shields are hard to find, so keep your eyes open for them. As of February 1st, Provoke now goes through physical armor and will allow you to taunt nearby enemies. Consider adding this to this build if you wish to fulfill the tank role. You have tons and tons of armor as a Terramancer, so this would be a natural fit. Lastly, having good fire resistance is useful for this build but not required. This is because that often enemies will use the oily surfaces you have provided to set things on fire, and it can get out of control really fast. Standing in fire is not really that bad for this build because you replenish magic armor when you attack, but lessening how much it does can be useful. Use fire, ice, and any other surfaces you can to keep melee units away so that you don't need to spend AP buffing your physical armor and you can keep on attacking. My final Divinity Original Sin 2 build will be coming next week, the Eternal Warrior, so stay tuned for that. Be sure to check out our other build guides. Good luck, sorcerers. Rivlon is counting on you.